All right, ready to start the show. For those of you that are here early, that way, Shanana is in the house. So we'll see y'all in a couple minutes. It's time to start the show.
Ready to be a boss? Test, survey, troubleshoot, and map Wi-Fi networks with the AirCheck G3 wireless analyzer. Super fast, portable, rugged, and for any skill level. Ready to add some cool to your kit? Check us out at netally.com/aircheck.
Hello, everyone. Uncle Marv here with another episode of the IT Business Podcast, powered by NetAlly. This is the Wednesday live show. Welcome. Thank you for joining us and hanging out. In just a moment, we are going to be joined by my good friend, Shanna Utgard, and you may remember her as the woman that almost sent $2 million out in a ransom attack, but no, she didn't. She survived that and became a great ambassador for cybersecurity in the channel. She was also the first person to do a live show here in studio at my office in Studio B, and she's joining us here this evening. I want to make sure that I let everybody know that I'm first going to call out Blackpoint Cyber. I had them on the show last week, and I gave them good ravings about their swag. They, of course, won Best Swag for 2023. And after I talked about the pen, I took it to my office, tried to write with it, and it did not work. And that is always one of the reasons why when I do try to evaluate swag, that's why I don't do it at the conference. I come back to my office, play with the swag, check and make sure it works. So very disappointed in the fact that we had just talked about it. It's a nice pen. It's a nice hefty pen, but Mackenzie Brown was gracious to come on the show, and hope that this doesn't ding the reputation with them. But tonight, we're going to talk about some swag that I did not have until just over a week ago. When I was on the show with Coach, he was showing his swag in the background, and he had one of these, and I did not. So I had to make a comment that, yeah, I didn't get that. And it mysteriously showed up at my office, courtesy of our guest this evening, Shanna Utgard in the house. Shanna, how are you?
If I was any better, there'd be two of me.
Are you sure?
Terrifying.
All right. So first, I want to say thank you for sending me the Dado alien.
Yes, small alien in a burlap sack.
Yes. And of course, questions abound. First of all, do you have a stash of these that you just, had one extra to spare, or did you send me your one and only?
I sent you my one and only.
No, I appreciate that. Did you pick it up at a conference?
I did. I think it was one of the ones that was out in Vegas. I'm pretty sure it was like around Halloween several years ago. I don't remember. All the shows are a blur at this point. I've been to so many of them.
They are. All right. So it's been a while since you've been on the show. I know some things behind the scenes, but we're not going to share all of that with the listeners. But real quick, how have things been going?
Pretty good. I got engaged back in
Oh,
February,
I wasn't
so
even going to share that one, but there you go.
yep,
Bling, bling.
that was exciting news. I've got something in the universe that's really looking out for me. I've had trees almost fall on my house. My neighbor's house caught on fire. Like it's been all kinds of craziness there. And I've been super obsessed with playing with AI. So
Super
that's
obsessed. Well, let me go back and first ask the neighbor's house um, burned down, but no damage to yours, no embers blowing in the wind over to your place.
Well, there were. So there was a tree right next to his garage because I'm up in Maine. So there's trees everywhere. And there were a bunch of burnt leaves that were, all along like the side of my house, but nothing fell on my house. The first responders up here were incredible. They got here so fast. It started in the garage and then it moved to an SUV in between the garage and the house and
Mm,
then over to the house as well. And they were able to contain it before it got, way too crazy and out of control. So
wow.
no
All right.
damage over here, thankfully.
It's not going to be one of those forensic files or Dateline episodes where, insurance is involved.
No, it's just one of those things where, like when I bought my house, it had all that old, like 1950s knob and tube electrical wiring and, no ground in it. So they're pretty sure it was an electrical fire. I ripped all that crap out of my house and replaced it with, modern wrapped, grounded electrical wire. But I have nightmares about my own house burning down. So that definitely didn't help.
All right. Well, glad you are okay, and congratulations on the bling. And
Thank you.
I, w- I think I deserve an invitation.
Absolutely. If you want to come up to Maine, you were so close recently. You're up in Boston. You were
Oh,
so
you
close.
knew. Yeah, I was. It wasn't that close, was it?
I'm I'm driving to Boston tomorrow, so
Oh,
it's an hour
that's
and
it?
20 minutes or so, like to right
Oh,
downtown Boston.
okay. Well, all right. Then I apologize. I actually sent a shout out to two friends that I was already booked, so I didn't have time to see you on this trip. Maybe another trip,
Yeah,
or maybe the wedding.
exactly.
Now, the wedding is going to be like in the summer when it's warm, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we've got like 8 whole weeks where it's like good weather here to do it. So hopefully it just won't rain that day. Although
Ah,
I've heard it's good luck, but I still don't want that.
all right. So let's do this. I know that people will be joining to hear my thoughts on Star Trek Picard, but I actually want to do a quick update on a news story that has been dominating the headlines. And there was an update that came out today that I started to do a blog on, but I did not get it published in time. But there is a big growing dispute between Microsoft, CrowdStrike, and Delta. And according to reports from CNBC and The Verge, Microsoft and CrowdStrike have publicly refuted Delta Airlines' accusations regarding the recent IT outage, instead pointing the finger back to the airline's delayed monetization efforts as the root cause of its prolonged recovery. So basically, Delta sent a letter. Delta is, I don't know if they're suing them, but they are basically uh, blaming Microsoft and CrowdStrike. Let's see, it looks like the airlines estimates the disruption at over $500 million, including tens of millions per day in compensation and hotels during the 5-day period. To this end, Delta has hired prominent attorney David Boies to explore potential damages claims. However, the airline's aggressive approach has been met with skepticism, as both Microsoft and CrowdStrike assert that Delta declined their offers of assistance during the crisis. So I'll have a link to all of that. That seems like it is going to be quite interesting. Shanna, any thoughts on Microsoft and CrowdStrike as part of that outage?
Oh my gosh, I had like friends and family members that everyone would be like, "Did we get hacked?" Like calls left and right about it. People that we don't even really like do business with, just friends, family, acquaintances. But I think that's also, I spent a lot of time working with and consulting with organizations around cyber liability insurance. And I think that's a really good point to make about like third party losses, because a lot of that stuff is kind of outside of your control. And Delta says we lost this much money. And then you start to get into that like kind of finger pointing game. And then the attorneys get involved, and it just never really looks good overall.
Nope, it doesn't. So I think I might put a little bad signal out to Bradley Gross to see, because here's what it boils down to for us. I think this is one of those issues where we as MSPs are always worried about, what if one of our vendors has an issue that affects the clients, and the clients look at us, we look at the vendor, and then what if that vendor points to somebody else? Especially if you're doing an integration, because a lot of our vendors, they partner together. So our RMM might be using, a AV or EDR product through another provider. And the instant that I thought of was, if I'm going to throw out names here, so don't get upset, don't email me. But if I'm using SentinelOne through Enable and there's an issue, but yet SentinelOne says, nope, there's no issue with us, it's the Enable integration, blah, 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 that could be an issue. So I wonder how our friend Bradley Gross will comment on that. So Bradley, if you're listening to my show, which I don't think you do anymore, but if you are, or if somebody wants to get this message to him, we need to chat. We need to chat about a bunch of stuff. I still haven't gotten my book. That's another thing. So before I forget, I see up in the screen here in the chat, I need to let listeners and watchers know, if you are on YouTube or the Facebook and you enter a response or comment in the chat, we see it. For some reason, though, in LinkedIn, if you're watching on LinkedIn and you put something in the chat, we do get the message, but we don't always get the name of the person. So there were 2 comments, and I don't know if they're the same person, but one was directed at you, or actually at me. I missed you in Boston, boo, next time. And if I knew who you were, I'll probably see it after the fact, because I can go to LinkedIn and see the name there, but I cannot see it on the screen now. But then here's one, to Shanna, New Hampshire here. We should grab coffee.
New Hampshire, let's do it. I'm like 15 minutes from the border.
Are those? Okay, that just must be like a little,
Tim.
a try. Tim Gold, Timmy. All right.
Yep.
There we go. Tim probably had fun with the CrowdStrike outage there, even though it's not, cybersecurity or anything. So, all right. So let's see here. So speaking of support, this is a rhetorical question that I'm going to throw out there, but I'm going to ask, when did Zoom become the remote support tool of choice? And here's why I asked this question. I'm going to mention names. I'm calling out vendors, and these are vendors that I use. And yes, one of them is a sponsor of the show, but I had an issue that started a couple of weeks ago where ThreatLocker stopped working on my phone. They have an app that if somebody has to send a request to get a program installed, you can either do it in the web, or you can, from your phone, open it up, select yes, approve, blah, blah, blah. Well, 2 weeks ago, it stopped working, and sent in a request to ThreatLocker. And of course, they're asking me, well, did you, reinstall the app? Did you reset your phone? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, I did all that. Come on now. So as soon as I said that, they're like, well, can we do a Zoom meeting? So my comment at the time was, what is a Zoom meeting gonna do on my phone? So that was the first thing that happened. Short answer to the Threat Locker situation, they released an update on Monday. I removed the app, put the new one on, works just fine now. So thank you, Threat Locker. Second issue was today, and again, a vendor that I use, and this is not a call out to the vendor to say how bad something was, but I had an issue uploading users to the TrueGrid portal from Azure AD. I had everything set up and the computers were reporting. The domain was set up. Azure AD was registered and synced. And but for some reason, the users were not showing up. And if somebody tried to log in, it would say invalid email. So I opened up the chat, say, hey, I'm having an issue. They asked me 2 questions. I answered the questions, and immediately, hey, are you available for a Zoom chat? And my whole thought is, when did Zoom become this remote support tool for everybody? Which really all they're doing is doing a meeting and asking to share the screen so they could watch and say, click here, click here, click here. I don't know what to say about it. I just want to ask the question. Are all the vendors going to Zoom for remote support? So let's see. Yes, Tim Golden. Yes, we can see you on the Facebook. We didn't actually have, to see you. I just was commenting. But of course, if I have my phone and I'm following on the LinkedIn, the chats show up on my phone. So I had seen you in the phone. I just wasn't looking at it. So, and then of course, Tim has answered the question, Zoom versus Team for screen share. Listen, I don't even like Teams. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say with that. I use it. I support Microsoft, but I hate Teams. Teams sucks, in my opinion. The opinions of the host do not necessarily represent the opinions of the listeners of the show.
No, everybody agrees Teams is horrible.
And even the new teams. I mean, the only thing that they did, let me rephrase that. The one thing that they made better was they added this little speaker view to where, like Zoom, when, if you do certain things, the person that's speaking becomes the primary screen and everybody else becomes small. They did do that, but it still sucks. All right, we'll just let that sit there.
I'm going to blame the pandemic for that because it went to everybody all of a sudden now has Zoom. So that's probably when it became the remote support.
That probably makes sense. Zoom became the video conferencing of choice. It is fairly inexpensive. And if you're not actually doing remote support, why not? I mean, you're just doing a screen share. You don't have to share video. You can just, turn off the camera and share the screen. So sounds good. And well, looky here, people in the chat are popping up. Giles, I like Teams. Of course you do, you 365 guru. There. And Tim, let's go back to Skype or WebEx or GoToMeeting.
Skype is the only thing that people use as a verb, but don't actually do.
I don't think I've seen a Skype in years.
Yep, but people will still say, let's Skype over it more than they'll FaceTime or they'll Zoom. Yeah. But
I did see somebody's bio where they were listing, all of their contact points, and their Skype ID was actually listed in the bio. And I said, really? Who uses that? So GoToAssist, Tim, was my remote support tool. The first one that I got that was tech related, Go to Assist. And I used that as my remote support tool until I upgraded to a real RMM in 2014. And I've been with them since. It's 10 years, might be time for a new one. So
Do you know how many people's devices out there still have like go to assist installed on them, even though the provider that used them either no longer uses it anymore, or it was like several IT providers before the one that they're currently with, but that software is still installed on all of their devices? I used to see it all the time in tech assessments.
I'd say like at least 1 million, because you know why? Because I don't think there was an uninstall on that. As a matter of fact, so I was doing a remote session with, I was on the phone with a user who was working from home. And before I had switched them over to TrueGrid, we were doing Sonic Wall VPN. But anybody that had remote access from their home, we also installed our agent on their home PC. The business said, look, if you're going to remote in, you have to have protection on it the same as the office. And of course, people pitched a fit. I don't want stuff on my home PC, but nonetheless, it happened, which, you know, bumped me up another 30 endpoints. So I was happy for that. But it was funny because I had back in the day a remote support tool called R Hub. And I've talked about it on the show. I have not used them in years, but R Hub was an appliance that I could have in my office, and I could do remote support with unattended access. And it was called Turbo Meeting, was the actual name of the software. And that was one that you could install and then set up for, you know, one-off support. And I usually would do it for servers, because that way, if something happened with my primary access, I still had Turbo Meeting through my office that worked just fine. And then anytime we would do a one-off with a client, I would use that because, again, I would just send them, it's a really small file. It installs pretty quickly. And then they would have basically an orange star on their screen. And the person I was talking to, it had been at least 5 years since I used that, before COVID. And she was on her laptop and she couldn't get TrueGrid to work. And so I was trying to walk her through it. Well, what's happened? What's changed? And she's like, well, I had a glitch. I had this happen and there were some corrupt files. And I said, oh, well, I don't know if we can get on. And I sent her the thing. She goes, well, I still have Turbo Meeting on my screen. I'm like, I haven't had that box up and running for 5 years. I said, no, you can probably get rid of that. So it happens. Yeah. If there's no uninstall remote feature for that, yeah, there's tons of software out there installed. Log Me In. I find that on systems all the time. So joy. All right. Shauna, did you ever watch Star Trek?
Yeah, when I was younger.
Okay. I'm not sure how to take that. As in, like, younger watching the cartoon Star Trek, or
No. Like OG Star Trek, but like when I was
in college watching Star Trek.
knee high to a grasshopper.
All right. So I'm going to guess you watched Star Trek Voyager or Star Trek Deep Space Nine or
Probably.
Next Generation.
All I remember is that when you go evil, you grow a goatee.
Oh, you watched the original series with
Yes.
James T. Kirk, the original James T. Kirk.
Yes.
Okay. So you probably don't know much about the series I'm going to mention now, Star Trek Picard.
I do not.
So I had been keeping this under wraps, but I wanted to announce to the listeners that I actually breakdown's not the right term. So for those that may not know, I actually started to watch Star Trek Picard when it first came out. And it was just after I had started watching Star Trek Discovery. And I only made it through the first few episodes of each of those series. And I was just like, this is horrible. in my opinion. I'm like, this sucks. So I think I watched the first 2.5 episodes of Star Trek Picard. So about a month ago, I decided I'm going to go ahead and watch it. I had heard people make comments about it and said it was great. And I said, all right, let me see if I can muster through. And I did. And once I got through, I believe it was the 4th episode, I'm like, ooh, this seems pretty interesting. So literally weekend after weekend, I sat and watched all 3 seasons of Star Trek Picard. And I wanted to let the listeners know, yes, I did watch it. I don't know that I can talk accurately about it because, again, the first season was all over the place. But the short answer for everybody's question is, let me say this. If you haven't watched it, shame on you. And spoiler alert, because I'm going to say some stuff. And I'm going to talk about the fact that I was quite surprised that they got all 7 of the original cast members of The Next Generation to actually show up for this. So Picard, Riker, Deanna Troi, Dr. Crusher, Worf, Data. Who am I missing? 7 of 9 wasn't even in that episode, but she was in there. I'm missing somebody. That's how bad it is. So I was quite surprised. I actually was very happy with the 2nd and 3rd seasons. I was a little miffed. So Shanna, if you don't know, Next Generation was like the cool Star Trek where things actually looked legit in terms of space age. You know, the Enterprise was cool looking. All of the, the tricorders and stuff, they weren't that cheesy, 1960s computer looking tech and stuff like that. And they did a real good job of progressing the story forward and having the characters age a little out of character in terms of what they were doing. Dr. Crusher was this, what's the right word to describe her? She was not like a bounty hunter or like a scavenger. It was like she was on this like barge of a ship with her son, wrecking havoc throughout the universe. So it was kind of out of character for her. Riker was technically a retired admiral, or was Picard the retired admiral? I don't know. But the end of season 1, here's what first got my attention. Picard dies. And again, if you haven't watched the show, shame on you, because I'm going to tell you, he dies. He dies. Really dies. Like, not like, Captain Kirk dies, by going off to the ribbon thing and then comes back and then dies again. But no, he dies. But then he is brought back as a synthetic. Any idea what a synthetic is?
Yes.
Really? So you
watched
watched
Fallout.
What Fallout?
Yeah, there's synths in Fallout. It's a video game that a lot of people play, like post-nuclear Fallout, and there are synths in Fallout as well.
Okay, all right. So he's a synthetic, which was kind of cool and interesting, and he's programmed to live out his normal life. Although I thought, well, if he's a synthetic, why can't they make Data synthetic? But I guess that would ruin the storyline of Data, because he is central in the way that they come back out of time, and Data has all of the stuff inside him to save them and all of that stuff. They, of course, have to go back in time, like every Star Trek series does. So that was interesting. They had to bring in Q, which if people watch Q, I can say this. Kim watches the show with me sometimes, and her first comment is, why does he have to be in it? And for those that don't know, Q is the person that they met in the very first episode the first and second episode of the Next Generation series. He, of course, ends the show because the entire series is this whole thing where humanity is on trial. And Q makes a comment to Jean-Luc Picard, the trial never ends. And so they had to find a way to weave him in there. I don't know why. It wasn't terribly critical, but I guess they had to find a way to bring back every single component in there. Wesley Crusher made an appearance to save somebody in his heightened existence with the Traveler. I know that you and probably a bunch of people watching and listening are like, what? But to the Trekkies,
I just hear that Q is like the Star Wars Jar Jar Binks, right? A lot of people just don't like him.
Okay. What else was in there? So it was a very interesting. I mean, of course, season 3 was basically all nostalgic. They literally found a way to bring back everything from the original series, or I should say the Next Generation, the first series, and bring it all back together. The entire crew ends up back together. So it was good, although, like I said, maybe it was a little too cheesy and nostalgic. The writing, in my sense, I think what gets me is in the beginning, we're so used to movies and shows now, they grab you in that first episode. Bourne, Jason Bourne grabs you in the beginning and then takes you through the story. A lot of these shows that I don't watch a lot of TV, but the ones I watch, Kim makes me watch some shows. Tracker is a show we started watching. And the first episode, I was like, oh, okay. Enough to get me back to watch another one. And then after this, okay. And then that was through, we just finally watched Reacher, the television series. We watched the movies, liked the movies, didn't like Tom Cruise as Reacher, but the guy they, put in for Reacher on this TV series, perfect. And the reason we didn't watch Reacher when it came out in regular TV is we don't have Amazon Prime, which is where Reacher was being played. And the reason we don't have Amazon Prime, we did it one time, but if you change your Amazon personal to Amazon business, they take away Amazon Video and you can't watch Prime on a business account. So we didn't want to create a separate Prime account just to watch TV because at the time we didn't have anything that we watched, Reacher. So I know I just went all over the place, but any questions, any comments?
No, I think the has to grab you right away says a lot about attention spans nowadays. I think that's a big reflection on it's got to get you right away, get something interested, or otherwise you're going to squirrel off to another show and write it off.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's tons of shows on TV.
Yep.
I mean, there's Beat Bobby Flay. You don't watch that?
I looked up, well, yeah, because I feel like Bobby Flay wins so many of those, and we actually looked it up the other day what his overall win percentage was on Beat Bobby Flay, and it was like in the 60%
yeah,
range.
60. It fluctuates between 66 and 68%.
Yeah, which I feel like I feel like he wins a lot more than that, but maybe not. I don't know.
Well, what's funny is that's a really good percentage based on the fact that half the time he doesn't really know what he's cooking. And let's go back for listeners if they're interested. Beat Bobby Flay is a show with Bobby, who was an Iron Chef, one of the original Iron Chefs on Food TV. And it's this competition where he challenges chefs to a food challenge where
it's a culinary showdown that shakes down in 2 rounds.
2 rounds, yes. So the 2 contestants, they go against each other, and the winner goes against Bobby Flay, but they go against him with what they call a signature dish. So something that, if they are the executive chef of a restaurant, or they own a chain of restaurants, they are proclaimed chefs, and they have what is their dish that is supposed to be, what they're known for, and something that they've cooked hundreds, if not thousands of times. And it's amazing how, if these are the dishes that you're so used to cooking, how do you not beat Bobby Flay Moore, who half the time doesn't even know what the dish is? Which goes to show how great a chef he is, where he'll just be like, I don't know, it looks like it. I mean, he won the other night with one that was like, I forget what it was called, but it was something, and he said, okay, well, it's not that. It looks like a pot pie. And he won. But that is interesting.
Except tacos. Most of the people that make tacos beat Bobby Flay.
Yeah, because come on. Yeah. Tacos really shouldn't even be allowed in that competition.
I agree.
I mean, a taco, how hard is it to make a taco?
I mean, for Bobby Flay, harder to beat his contestants on those.
So tacos and sweets. Like, he's not a big bakery type person.
Yeah.
So. All right. So I don't know how much, obviously not a lot of Trekkers live in the chat here, because I'm not getting comments, and which is good. Your dog is piping up now.
I know.
Maybe he's questioning the character and plot development of Picard.
No, the other half just got home, so they're freaking out right now.
Okay.
There's two of them now.
Two of them.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what else about Star Trek. I was quite surprised that where was it? Those shows cost between $8 to $9 million per episode to make. Which, first of all, I don't know if it's a lot of money, but it sounds like a lot of money. So, it took place in California. Although it was $8 to $9 million to make per episode, it benefited from large tax credits. I mean, if it cost $8 million to make, but I got $100,000 in tax credits, right? So, all right. So I watched Star Trek Picard. I'm now slowly making my way through Star Trek Discovery, and then I will turn back to the Star Wars sagas. I know I have to go back and watch Rogue One, Attack of the Clones, and some other things. What's the Mandalorian? That's the one that everybody liked. So I may have to watch that. You know.
Yes, my other half watches all of those. I a lot of that stuff is like to me.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't watch any of the superhero stuff, although we did go see Deadpool and Wolverine, because that's like, Deadpool is my kind of, comic book character, because he's,
right. Is that the latest one?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm a really bad nerd. I don't yeah.
I am too. I am. I have no gadgets. I have no, anything like that. So, all right. Well, let's go ahead and start ending off the show. I want to make sure that I pitch the sponsors of the show. I mentioned at the top, Net Ally, basically networking, testing, and analyst experts. Whether you're deploying, managing, or troubleshooting wired and wireless networks, Net Ally has the tools to get the job done. SuperOps, streamline your MSP operations with SuperOps, the all-in-one platform for service desk, invoicing, and project management. SuperOps, the next frontier of MSP innovation. And then we also mentioned TrueGrid earlier, secure remote access for your Windows, desktops, and apps with TrueGrid Secure RDP. Unlike legacy solutions, TrueGrid eliminates firewall exposure and internet latency. And as I always say, don't run your RDP naked. And you can always head over to itbusinesspodcast.com/sponsors and see those ones I mentioned, as well as others that are supporting the show, just not being represented here today, but they are still friends of the show. You should go check them out. Check that sponsor page. And I have to say, I was looking at the stats, and I think some bot must have hit the Net Ally page because they had 267 clicks in the last 7 days. So I don't know what's happened. I don't think I said anything super. Oh, I did. I showed the Cyberscope last week. That probably could be it. So fantastic. Thank you all for supporting the sponsors of the show. And of course, I also need to say thank you. If you head over to IT Business Podcast and click on the Amazon link at the top of the page, save that as your home page. If you do any shopping on Amazon, start there, and nothing changes for you. You go through and search and click all your stuff and check out. No price surcharge or anything like that. In the back end, Amazon gives us a little commission. So I want to thank you all for using the link. I'm going to ask you to continue doing so. If you have friends and family that you know buy on Amazon, maybe send them a link and help the show out. And I should also mention that in the future, when we do the Black Friday preview, it might be coming with an Amazon Live special. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Donna, do you have a story that you think would challenge Florida Man, or would you like to answer a random question?
I can try a Florida Man challenger. Like, we don't have
Okay.
a whole lot that goes on up here in Maine, but we'll give it a shot. I found one.
All right.
All right, you want me to read it?
Yes.
Okay. The whole story or just the headline?
Let's start with the headline and see if it actually grabs our attention.
Okay. A Maine man was arrested for shooting at a group of teens playing Ding Dong Ditch.
Okay. Let's hear that.
A Harrison man was arrested after shooting at a group of teens playing Ding Dong Ditch. Police arrived around 1 a.m. Saturday after numerous reports of gunshots and screaming. As deputies arrived on the scene to find blood on the roadway, one of the teens walked into Bridgeton Hospital with a non-life-threatening gunshot wound. An investigation found that after the teens rang the doorbell at 91 Waterford Road, 30-year-old Vincent Martin of Harrison produced a 9mm handgun and shot 14 rounds at the teens, hitting one victim in the right calf. So Martin was arrested on multiple charges, including aggravated assault and reckless conduct, and he's being held on a $5,000 cash bail and has been ordered not to have contact with any of the kids and is not allowed to purchase firearms or ammunition.
Wow. So, of course, while you're reading, I'm like, okay, Ding Dong Ditch. What is that? And of course, it's just a regular prank game where you run up to a doorbell and run away. So,
Yep.
So here's the thing. If they were a group of kids, I'm assuming that they rang his doorbell and he was chasing after them and shooting.
Yep.
Which works fine down here in Florida, but apparently not up there in Maine.
Yeah, I think you're only allowed to shoot people if they come into your house. So, I grew up with like a redneck dad and a bunch of uncles who used to say, like, if somebody is trying to rob your house and you shoot them and they run out of your house, grab them by the ankle and drag them back.
And pull them inside. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As long as they end up inside, and you can't have visible blood drag marks.
Right.
All right. So that sounds like a good story. Here is my story. Florida man charged with lassoing aggressive 9-foot gator. So it doesn't
Isn't that
sound
what you're supposed to do?
So the story starts with a 71-year-old Florida man. Robert Collin was arrested and charged with a felony after lassoing a 9-foot alligator in Cape Canaveral, Florida. where the space shuttles go off, claiming he was trying to protect local turtles from what he perceived as an aggressive reptile. So Colin used a nylon clothesline to capture the gator, tie it to a handrail before authorities arrived and charged him for illegally capturing wildlife without proper permits. So this all happened back on August 1st. And very interesting. So let's see.
I personally think that he deserves a gold medal for gator wrestling. That's,
Yeah, but it's funny is his intention was to protect the turtles that he and others in the community enjoyed feeding, highlighting a misguided attempt to address perceived wildlife conflict in urban areas. So I don't know that gators in Florida actually go after turtles, but here's the legal consequences. So what you cannot do is kill, injure, or possess an alligator without authorization. So he was booked into jail with a $2,500 bond. And then he also, he also could, the Brevard Sheriff's Office emphasized that there are proper channels for addressing nuisance alligators, including contacting local law enforcement or the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, which has licensed trappers to relocate animals.
I wouldn't say that he was possessing this gator. I would call it detaining. It's like a citizen's arrest for gators.
It's like what you see on Cops or Live PD. You're not under arrest, you're just detained.
Exactly.
But here's the bad part. So because the alligator was captured, it was later classified as a nuisance and then euthanized.
I think he was just misunderstood.
Yeah, well, too late now. It's dead. But Colin, 71 years old, got to go to court later. So
that's pretty
all right. So, Shauna, thanks for hanging out. It's been a while.
It has been.
We're going to have to, I don't know when you're going to get married, but I just was up there, so I hope it's not too soon.
No, I'm thinking Thursday of next year sounds good.
Yeah, but next year could be in January, and that's too cold.
Oh, God, no. September is the most beautiful month in Maine.
Really?
If anybody disagrees, they can come at me. But
is that September. Kind of like, is that your end of summer, beginning of fall time?
Yeah, it's when it's still really nice and every year I feel like it's getting warmer, like into late September, October. But you've got nice warm days and then really cool nights where, you open up all the windows, the temperature drops 20 degrees from the daytime. You can get a nice breeze in the house. It's just beautiful. And then the leaves start turning and
okay, this is going to turn non-technical, but have you already started thinking about the logistics of the wedding? Like, is it going to be indoors? Is it going to be outdoors?
I think we're just going to do something here at the yard and get one of those big giant white, tents and just do something right here at the house. Because why am I going to go out and spend, $10,000-$15,000 on a wedding venue when I bought a house on a lake? So I figure we'll just probably do something here.
Are there mosquitoes on the lake?
We spray for mosquitoes. But the Maine state bird is the black fly. So
be wary of the black fly and not the mosquitoes.
We actually surprisingly don't have a lot of black flies here on my property. I've never seen a tick in the 3.5 years that I've lived here either. So that's really good. We just spray for mosquitoes every couple weeks or every 8 weeks or so. I can't help standing water. There's a lake.
Yeah, we'll chat about that after the show here. So, but Shauna, thank you for coming out, and we'll be chatting down the road. I think a lot more than before because I have to plan if I got to go up to the Northeast. I mean, I've traveled up to the Northeast I think, once a decade. So this might have to accelerate the schedule.
Well, it doesn't count if it's for work.
Sure it does. A trip's a trip. That's how
You've
I see
been traveling like crazy lately. You're hitting all
And
the
that's-
shows.
Yeah, that's part of it. So yeah, well, actually we'll be in DC, so that's not close.
It's a 10-hour drive. I went to college down there, so.
All right. All right, Shauna. Well, thank you for hanging out. Thank you all for hanging out with us. Tim and Giles, and I forget who else. There's a couple of other LinkedIn no-namers I saw. But thank you. Looks like Carrie Rosa had popped in. Jeremy McSpadden. Thank you all. That's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. We'll be back with another show next week. Of course, be sure to head over to itbusinesspodcast.com to see what other shows are released. We've got a bunch of audios still coming out, some vendor profiles. What you could do is subscribe to us in your favorite podcatcher, and that way you'll get all the shows when they're released, and just don't end up like Jason Miller and fall behind by 2 or 3 months, because these shows are good. That's it, folks. We'll see you next week. And until then, holla.